the last laugh. They thought I was losing my mind because I forgot where I put my car keys twice in 1 week. They thought I was becoming a danger to myself because I left the stove on after making tea. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my will to pretend everything was fine when my own daughter was slowly poisoning my life, one small betrayal at a time. My name is Margaret Chen, and at 73, I've survived a lot more than anyone gives me credit for. I survived immigrating to America with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. I survived building a successful catering business from my tiny apartment kitchen. I survived raising 2 children as a single mother after my husband died in a construction accident when the kids were still in elementary school. And now, I was about to survive my daughter's attempt to steal everything I'd worked for. But survival wasn't enough anymore. This time, I wanted justice. Chapter 1. The Perfect Daughter. Linda was always the golden child. While her older brother Michael struggled with his grades and later with addiction, Linda excelled at everything she touched. Valedictorian in high school, full scholarship to Northwestern, MBA from Wharton. She married a successful surgeon, lived in a house that looked like something from a magazine, and had 2 beautiful children who called me Nai Nai and hugged me like I was made of sunshine. For 20 years. I was so proud of her I could burst. She was my success story, my proof that all those 16-hour days building my catering business had been worth it. Every time someone complimented her achievements, I felt like I was glowing from the inside out. But success, I learned, can make people hungry for more than they deserve. It started small. Mom, you're 70 now. Maybe it's time to think about slowing down. This from Linda as she watched me prep for a wedding that would net my business $15,000. You don't need to work so hard anymore. I should have paid attention to the way she said need. Like she'd already done the math on what I had and decided I had enough. Then came the concerned phone calls. Dr. Peterson says you should really consider getting a financial advisor, Mom. Someone to help you organize your accounts. When I asked why she'd been discussing my finances with her husband, she laughed it off. We're just worried about you. We want to make sure you're protected. Protected from what? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. I trusted her. She was my daughter, my baby girl who used to fall asleep on my lap while I calculated catering costs and planned menus. The same girl who once told me I was her hero. Heroes, apparently, have expiration dates. The memory issues started around the same time Linda began visiting more frequently. Little things at first. I'd forget where I put my reading glasses, or I'd start a sentence and lose track of what I was saying mid-thought. Linda noticed everything. Mom, you asked me that same question 5 minutes ago, she'd say, her voice heavy with concern. Are you feeling all right? The truth was, I wasn't feeling all right, but not in the way she thought. I felt tired in a bone-deep way that sleep couldn't fix. I felt like I was walking through fog even on the clearest days. What I didn't know then was that the vitamins Linda had started bringing me weren't vitamins at all. Chapter 2. The Slow Fade. Dr. Peterson, Linda's husband, the man I'd welcomed into our family like a son, started making house calls. Just checking in on you, Margaret, he'd say with that practiced bedside manner. Linda's worried about some of the things you've been saying. What things? I'd wonder. But when I asked, the answers were always vague. You seemed confused about what day it was, or you couldn't remember our conversation about your medication. The medication. That was Linda's next move, though I didn't see it coming. Dr. Peterson thinks these new supplements will help with your memory, Mom. Just take one with breakfast and one with dinner, okay? They were small, white pills that dissolved on my tongue with a bitter aftertaste. Within a week of starting them, the fog in my head got thicker. I'd find myself standing in my kitchen, completely lost about what I'd come there to do. I'd pick up the phone to call someone and forget who I was calling before I finished dialing. I think we need to talk about some changes, Linda said one Tuesday afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table with a folder full of papers. Dr. Peterson and I have been researching memory care facilities, just as a backup option. Memory care facilities. The words hit me like cold water. Linda, I'm not. Not what, Mom? Not forgetting things? Not leaving the stove on? Not getting lost in the grocery store you've shopped at for 20 years? Had I gotten lost in the grocery store? I couldn't remember, which terrified me. But something in Linda's voice, something too eager, too prepared, made a small alarm bell ring in the back of my cloudy mind. I want to see my doctor, I said. Dr. Peterson is a doctor, Mom. My doctor, Dr. Williams. Linda's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Dr. Williams is retiring, remember? He referred you to Dr. Peterson. I didn't remember that conversation, but then again, I wasn't remembering much of anything clearly these days. The pills Linda gave me sat on my kitchen counter like sentries, and twice a day I dutifully took them, trusting my daughter to care for me the way I'd cared for her. Trust, I was learning, is a luxury you can't afford when money is involved. Chapter 3. The Trap Springs. The paperwork started appearing like mushrooms after rain. Power of attorney documents, healthcare proxy forms, something called a revocable trust that Linda explained would protect my assets and make things easier if something happened to me. You don't have to read all the legal jargon, Mom, she said, pointing to signature lines she'd marked with little yellow sticky notes. I had my lawyer draw these up. They're standard forms. I signed them. God forgive me, I signed every single one while my mind swam in whatever pharmaceutical fog Dr. Peterson had prescribed. Linda watched me write my name with the satisfaction of someone who'd just solved a very complicated puzzle. The bank visits came next. We need to streamline your accounts, Mom. Too many different banks and credit cards. It's no wonder you're getting confused. Linda was so patient, so thorough. She held my elbow as we walked into each bank, spoke for me when I seemed tired or confused, and made sure every account had her name added as a co-owner. Just for emergencies, she assured me. This way if something happens, I can help you pay your bills. My catering business, which I'd built from nothing and which still brought in steady income, was quietly transferred into the trust. For tax purposes, Linda explained. The rental property I'd bought as an investment was transferred too. One by one, everything I'd worked for was moved just slightly out of my reach. But the pills, those bitter little pills, kept my mind too cloudy to connect the dots. The morning I woke up and couldn't remember what year it was, Linda was ready. I think it's time, Mom, she said, her voice full of manufactured sorrow. We can't keep pretending this isn't getting worse. The memory care facility was beautiful, I'll give her that. Soft colors, comfortable furniture, staff members who spoke in gentle, patronizing tones. Sunset Manor, Linda said as she walked me through the halls. They specialize in patients with early-stage dementia. You'll get the care you need here. Dementia. The word followed me like a shadow as Linda showed me to a room that felt more like a hotel than a home. Just for a few weeks, she promised, until we figure out what's causing these episodes. What was causing the episodes was sitting in a pill bottle in my purse, but I was too far gone to realize it then. I hugged Linda goodbye, told her I loved her, and watched her drive away in the BMW I'd helped her buy 5 years earlier. It wasn't until she was gone that I realized she hadn't left me a key to my own house. Chapter 4. The Awakening Sunset Manor had a policy about medication. All pills had to be distributed by nursing staff, no exceptions. It's for your safety, Mrs. Chen, the head nurse explained as she took my purse and inventoried everything inside, including Linda's vitamins. What are these? She asked, holding up the white pills. I told her what Linda had told me, supplements for memory. The nurse frowned and made a note in my chart. We'll need Dr. Peterson to fax over the prescription information before we can continue these. For the first time in months, I didn't take the pills that night, or the next night, or the night after that. By the 4th day, the fog in my head began to lift like morning mist. By the end of the week, I could remember entire conversations. I could recall the names of all the staff members, remember what I'd eaten for breakfast, and most importantly, I could think clearly enough to realize I'd been played. The supplements Linda had been giving me weren't supplements at all. They were some kind of sedative or memory-suppressing drug that Dr. Peterson had been prescribing without my knowledge. No wonder I'd been confused and forgetful. I'd been systematically drugged for months. The rage that filled me was clean and sharp, like a blade that had been honed to perfection. My own daughter, my brilliant, successful, golden child, had been poisoning me to steal everything I'd worked for. But rage without a plan is just noise, and I'd spent 60 years learning how to turn problems into solutions. Chapter 5. The Investigation. Sunset Manor had a computer lab for residents, complete with internet access and a very patient volunteer named Mrs. Rodriguez, who helped seniors navigate the digital world. "I want to check my bank accounts," I told her during my first visit to the lab. "Of course, dear. Do you remember your login information?" I did. For the first time in months, my memory was crystal clear. Account after account showed the same story. Funds transferred to accounts I'd never opened, credit cards I'd never applied for, maxed out on purchases I'd never made. My catering business bank account, which should have had nearly $40,000 from recent events, showed a balance of $312. Every transfer, every withdrawal, every devastating financial decision had Linda's signature on it. Or rather, it had my signature, forged so carefully that even I had trouble telling the difference. "Mrs. Rodriguez," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest, "I need to make some phone calls." The first call was to my original bank, the small community bank where I'd opened my very first business account 30 years ago. The manager, Tom Breslin, had known me since Linda was in high school. "Margaret, how are you doing? Linda said you'd been having some health issues." "Tom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. When Linda came in to transfer my accounts, did I seem confused to you?" There was a pause. "Well, honestly, Margaret, you did seem a little out of it. Linda said you'd been having memory problems, and you were very quiet during the meeting. She did most of the talking." "Do you remember what I was wearing?" Another pause, longer this time. "Actually, now that I think about it, you weren't really dressed like yourself. Usually you're so put together, but that day you were in sweatpants and—" "Why are you asking?" "Because I think my daughter has been drugging me and stealing my money, Tom, and I need to know if you still have security footage from that day." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. "Jesus Christ, Margaret, are you serious?" "Dead serious. And Tom, I'm going to need a very good lawyer." Chapter 6. Building the Case. Tom Breslin didn't just give me security footage, he gave me a full forensic accounting of every transaction on my accounts for the past year. He also gave me something even more valuable, the name of his sister-in-law, a lawyer named Sarah Chang, who specialized in elder abuse cases. Sarah visited me at Sunset Manor 3 days later, carrying a briefcase and wearing the kind of expression that suggested she'd seen this story before. "Mrs. Chen, I want you to know that what you're describing is more common than you might think, and it's completely criminal." "Can we prove it?" "Oh, we can prove it. The question is how far you want to take this. Your daughter has committed multiple felonies: wire fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, unlawful imprisonment, the list goes on. She could go to prison for a very long time." The thought of Linda in prison should have made me sad. Instead, I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest, like winter air. "I want to take it as far as the law allows." Sarah smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." The medical records were our smoking gun. Sarah subpoenaed my charts from Dr. E. Peterson's office and discovered that he'd been prescribing me haloperidol, an antipsychotic medication used to treat severe mental illness, without my knowledge or informed consent. The vitamins Linda had been giving me were powerful sedatives that explained my months of confusion and memory loss. "This is medical malpractice and conspiracy to commit elder abuse," Sarah explained. "Dr. Peterson's career is over. But more importantly, it proves that your mental state was artificially induced, which means every document you signed while under the influence is null and void." The financial records painted an even clearer picture. Over the course of 8 months, Linda had systematically drained my accounts, maxed out credit cards in my name, and transferred ownership of my business and properties to herself. The total theft exceeded $400,000. "She got sloppy toward the end," Sarah noted, pointing to a series of transfers. "She was moving money so fast she didn't bother to cover her tracks. Look at this. She bought herself a new Mercedes the same day she transferred money from your business account. We can trace every dollar." But Sarah saved the best revelation for last. "Mrs. Chen, did you know that your daughter took out a life insurance policy on you 6 months ago? $1 million policy with herself as the sole beneficiary." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "What does that mean?" "It means that if something had happened to you while you were in this facility, Linda would have collected $1 million. And given the medications you were being given without your knowledge, well, let's just say that people don't usually recover from the kind of dementia you were supposedly suffering from. My daughter hadn't just been stealing from me. She'd been planning to kill me." Chapter 7. The Confrontation. I insisted on confronting Linda myself, against Sarah's advice. "Let me handle the initial contact," Sarah had said. "Surprise is our biggest advantage right now." But I needed to look Linda in the eye when she realized her perfect plan had fallen apart. I needed to watch her face when she discovered that the confused, helpless mother she'd been manipulating was sharp as ever and angrier than she'd ever been in her life. Sarah arranged for Linda to visit me at Sunset Manor under the pretense of a care plan meeting. Linda arrived looking perfectly put together as always. Designer suit, perfect hair, carrying a leather portfolio like she was heading to a business meeting, which in a way she was. "Mom," she hugged me with practiced warmth. "You look so much better. How are you feeling?" "Clear-headed," I said, watching her carefully. "Clearer than I've been in months." "That's wonderful. The staff said you've been participating in activities, getting more social. I'm so proud of you for adjusting so well." She sat across from me in the facility's family meeting room, opened her portfolio, and began spreading papers across the table. "I brought some forms for you to sign, just routine stuff, insurance updates, account transfers to make sure your bills get paid while you're here. More documents, more sticky notes marking signature lines, more of Linda's careful, systematic theft disguised as caring for her aging mother." "I'm not going to sign those," I said quietly. Linda's smile flickered but held. "Mom, these are important. We need to make sure—" "I know what haloperidol is, Linda." The smile died completely. Her face went pale, then flushed red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "It's an antipsychotic medication, very powerful. Causes memory loss, confusion, disorientation when given to someone who doesn't actually need it. Someone like me." Linda's hands were trembling now. "Mom, you're confused. I haven't been taking anything for a week. Funny how quickly my dementia cleared up once I stopped taking your vitamins." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Linda's mask was slipping, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. This was my daughter, but it was also a stranger who had been willing to destroy me for money. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want every penny you stole returned to my accounts. I want you to transfer my business and properties back to me. I want you to cancel the life insurance policy you took out on me, and I want you to stay the hell away from me for the rest of my life." Linda's laugh was sharp and bitter. "You can't prove anything. You're a confused old woman with memory problems. Who's going to believe you?" I pulled out my phone and stopped the recording I'd been making. The FBI, for starters. Also, the district attorney, the medical board, and probably a few news outlets who would love to hear about a successful surgeon and his wife who were slowly killing an elderly woman for her money. The color drained from Linda's face completely. "You have 24 hours to start returning my money," I continued. "After that, my lawyer files criminal charges against both you and your husband: elder abuse, medical malpractice, conspiracy to commit murder. Sarah says you could be looking at 20 years in federal prison." Linda stood up so fast she knocked her chair over. "You're making a mistake, Mom. A huge mistake." "The only mistake I made was trusting you." She left without another word, her heels clicking frantically down the hallway. I sat in that quiet room for a long time after she was gone, feeling empty and full at the same time. Empty of the illusions I'd carried about my daughter, full of a terrible, liberating clarity about what came next. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Linda didn't return the money in 24 hours. She didn't return it in 48 hours. On the third day, Sarah filed charges with the district attorney and the FBI. On the fourth day, Dr. Peterson was arrested at his office. On the fifth day, Linda was arrested at her home in front of her children and half the neighborhood. The local news picked up the story, and within a week it had gone national. Daughter and son-in-law accused of systematically drugging mother in million-dollar theft scheme. The headlines were brutal, and Linda's carefully constructed reputation crumbled overnight. I felt no satisfaction watching her perp walk on the evening news. This wasn't victory. It was just the natural consequence of choices Linda had made. She'd chosen money over love, greed over loyalty, and murder over compassion. The legal system was simply catching up to her. The hardest part was the grandchildren. Michael, Linda's 16-year-old son, came to visit me at Sunset Manor a week after his mother's arrest. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 7 days. "Nai nai," he said, using the Chinese term for paternal grandmother that I'd taught him when he was little. "Is it true? Did she really try to hurt you?" I looked at this boy, this young man who looked so much like Linda at that age, full of potential and pain, and chose my words carefully. "Your mother made some very bad choices, Michael. But those choices don't define you. They don't define your sister, and they don't change how much I love both of you," he cried then, the way children cry when their world falls apart and they don't know how to put it back together. I held him while he sobbed, this grandson who was paying the price for his mother's greed, and I made him a promise. "You and Emma will always have a home with me. Always. Your mother's mistakes don't make you responsible for fixing them, but they also don't make you victims unless you choose to be." "What's going to happen to Mom?" "Your mother is going to face the consequences of what she did. But that's her journey, not yours. Your journey is figuring out who you want to be when all this is over." Chapter 9. The Rebuilding. I didn't stay at Sunset Manor much longer. With Sarah's help, I was able to prove that my placement there had been based on fraudulent medical information, and the facility agreed to let me leave without any admission of wrongdoing on their part. They knew they'd been played almost as badly as I had. Finding a new place to live was easier than I expected. The rental property Linda had stolen and sold was purchased by a young couple who, when they learned the story, immediately offered to sell it back to me at cost. "We don't want to profit from someone else's pain," the wife told me. "Besides, this house should belong to the person who really owns it." My catering business took longer to rebuild, but rebuild it I did. Word of my story had spread through the community, and suddenly I had more clients than I could handle. "We want to support you," one bride told me when she hired me for her wedding. "And honestly, if you survived what your daughter did to you, we know you can handle anything." The money Linda had stolen was slowly recovered through asset seizure and restitution orders. Not all of it. Some had been spent on purchases that couldn't be recovered, but enough to rebuild my life. More importantly, the business I'd spent 30 years building was mine again, legally and completely. Linda and Dr. Peterson pled guilty to multiple felonies. Linda received 12 years in federal prison. Dr. Peterson got 15 and lost his medical license permanently. They also owed me substantial restitution, though Sarah warned me it might take years to collect everything. Justice isn't always about getting everything back, she told me. Sometimes it's about making sure it can't happen again. Linda never apologized. Not in her plea hearing, not in the letters she occasionally sent from prison, not in the supervised phone calls with her children. She maintained that she'd been trying to protect me, that everything had gotten out of hand, that she'd never intended for things to go as far as they did. I stopped reading her letters after the third one. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not something you owe to people who've hurt you. And I wasn't ready to give Linda that gift. Might never be ready. Chapter 10. The New Normal. 2 years after Linda's arrest, I was hosting my first family Thanksgiving in my restored home. Michael and Emma, now 18 and 15, helped me prep vegetables and set the table. They'd been living with me since their father couldn't handle being a single parent to 2 teenagers while dealing with his own criminal charges. It was a smaller gathering than in previous years. Linda's absence was still a wound in our family that might never fully heal. But it was honest in a way our previous celebrations hadn't been. No more pretending Linda's marriage was perfect. No more pretending her children were happy. No more pretending that success and money were the same as love and loyalty. "Nai," Emma asked as we arranged flowers in the dining room, "do you ever miss Mom?" It was the question I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. Emma was old enough to understand what her mother had done, but young enough to still need her mother despite everything. "I miss the mother I thought she was," I said carefully. "I miss the daughter who used to help me in the kitchen when she was your age. I miss the woman who cried happy tears when you and Michael were born. But the person who drugged me and stole from me and planned to let me die? No, sweetheart, I don't miss her at all." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand. It's like she became a different person. Or maybe she showed me who she really was, and I just wasn't ready to see it." Michael, who'd been quiet through most of these conversations over the past 2 years, spoke up from the kitchen where he was mashing potatoes. "She used to tell us that you were getting old and wouldn't be around much longer. She'd say it like it was sad, but now I think maybe she was hoping it would happen faster." The honesty of it was breathtaking and horrible. My own daughter had been preparing her children for my death while actively hastening it. But these kids, these beautiful, damaged, resilient young people, had survived their mother's toxicity and were building something healthier in its place. "Well," I said, forcing lightness into my voice, "I'm still here, and I plan to stick around for a long time yet." "Good," Emma said, hugging me tight. "We need you." Chapter 11. The Legacy. 3 years post-trial, I started speaking at elder abuse prevention seminars. Sarah had connected me with several advocacy organizations that work to educate seniors about financial exploitation, and I discovered I had a talent for public speaking that I'd never known about. The hardest thing to accept, I would tell audiences full of concerned adult children and wary seniors, is that the person most likely to financially abuse an elderly person is their own family member. We want to believe that blood is thicker than greed, but money changes people in ways that love sometimes can't overcome. I'd tell them about the warning signs I'd missed, the sudden increase in concerned visits, the push to sign legal documents quickly, the isolation from other family members and friends. I'd explain how gradually the mind-altering drugs had been introduced, how carefully Linda had built her case for my incompetence. "Trust your instincts," I'd say. "If something feels wrong, it probably is, and don't let anyone, not even your own children, make you feel guilty for protecting yourself." The speaking engagements led to something I'd never expected, a book deal. The Last Laugh, How I Survived My Daughter's Betrayal and Reclaimed My Life, became a bestseller in the memoir category. The advance alone was more money than Linda had stolen from me. I donated half the proceeds to elder abuse prevention programs. The other half went into college funds for Michael and Emma, with ironclad legal protections that would prevent anyone, including me, from accessing the money for anything other than their education. "Why are you doing this?" Michael asked when I explained the trust funds to them. "Because your mother's greatest crime wasn't stealing my money," I said. "It was trying to steal your futures. This way, no one can ever do that to you again." Chapter 12. The Healing. By year 4, something unexpected happened. I was happy, not just content, not just surviving, but genuinely happy in a way I hadn't been in years, maybe decades. The business was thriving, my relationship with my grandchildren was stronger than ever, and I'd built a community of friends and supporters that felt more like family than my biological family ever had. I started dating, which shocked everyone, including myself. His name was Robert Kim, a retired engineer whose wife had died 3 years earlier. We met at a community center cooking class, bonded over our shared love of terrible puns and good food, and discovered that starting over in your 70s wasn't impossible. It was just different. "You know," he said one evening as we sat on my back porch watching the sunset, "most people our age are slowing down. You seem to be speeding up." "I spent too many years letting other people define my limits," I replied. "I'm making up for lost time." Robert understood something about betrayal that most people didn't. His own son had tried to pressure him into selling his house and moving into assisted living so the son could inherit sooner. "Family," Robert said with a bitter laugh, "is supposed to be the people who have your back, not the people who stab you in it." We were both healing from the particular kind of wound that comes when the people you love most hurt you deepest. But we were also proof that healing was possible, that trust could be rebuilt with the right people, that life after betrayal could be richer and more authentic than life before it. Chapter 13. The Unexpected Visit. Linda was released on parole after serving 8 years of her 12-year sentence. I knew because her parole officer called to inform me, as was required by law for victims of her crimes. She was forbidden from contacting me directly, but she was allowed to live in the same state as long as she stayed at least 50 miles away from my home. I didn't expect her to try to contact me. I certainly didn't expect her to show up at one of my speaking engagements. It was a community center in a town about an hour from my house. I was giving my standard presentation about financial elder abuse to a group of about 60 people, mostly seniors and their adult children. I was in the middle of explaining how gradual the manipulation had been when I saw her. Linda was sitting in the back row, wearing clothes I didn't recognize and looking older than her 47 years. Prison, apparently, had not been kind to her. She was thinner, grayer, and there was something hollow in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I faltered for just a moment, lost my train of thought, then found it again and continued with my presentation. But I was acutely aware of her presence for the remaining 30 minutes of my talk. After the Q&A session ended and people began to leave, Linda approached the front of the room. Several audience members were still talking to me, asking for book recommendations and sharing their own stories, but they gradually dispersed until it was just Linda and me in the echoing community center. "Hello, Mom." Her voice was different, smaller somehow, less confident. The woman who had once commanded boardrooms and convinced doctors to participate in elder abuse schemes was gone. In her place was someone who looked tired and defeated. "Linda," I kept my voice neutral, "you're not supposed to be here. I know, I wanted to hear you speak. I wanted to understand." "Understand what?" "How you survived it. How you came back from what I did to you." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, for the calculated performance that had fooled me for so many months. But what I saw instead was something I hadn't expected: genuine remorse. "You want to understand how I survived?" I asked. "I survived because I had to, because your children needed at least one parent who wasn't in prison, because I had work to finish and a life to rebuild, and because I discovered that I'm stronger than you ever gave me credit for." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I know sorry isn't enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I am sorry, Mom, for all of it. I don't know how I became someone who could hurt you like that." "You became that person gradually," I said. "The same way you tried to destroy me, little by little, choice by choice, until you were so far from who you used to be that you couldn't find your way back. Is there—" She paused, wiped her eyes. "Is there any chance we could I ever be part of the family again?" The question hung in the air between us. Part of me, the part that remembered rocking her to sleep as a baby, teaching her to ride a bicycle, cheering at her graduation, wanted to say yes, but the larger part of me, the part that had learned hard lessons about trust and boundaries, knew better. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday, but not today and not anytime soon. You didn't just steal my money, Linda. You stole my faith in you. You made me doubt my own mind. You were willing to let me die for insurance money. That's not something you come back from with an apology and tears." She nodded, looking more defeated than ever. "What about Michael and Emma? Will you tell them I was here?" "That's up to you to decide. They're both adults now. Well, Michael is, and Emma will be soon. If you want a relationship with them, you'll have to earn it the same way you'd earn it with me. Slowly, honestly, and with full acknowledgement of the harm you've caused." Linda stood there for another long moment, as if hoping I might change my mind or offer her some path back to forgiveness. But I had nothing else to give her. I'd spent 4 years rebuilding everything she'd destroyed, and I wasn't about to risk that progress on false promises of redemption. "I'm proud of you," she said finally, "for surviving, for thriving, for becoming someone stronger than I ever was." Then she left, walking out of the community center and, I assumed, out of my life again. I stood in that empty room for a long time after she was gone, processing emotions I couldn't quite name. Seeing Linda again hadn't reopened old wounds. Those had healed too completely for that, but it had reminded me of something important. Forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying their betrayal forever. I wasn't ready to forgive Linda. Might never be ready, but I was ready to stop letting her crimes define my story. Chapter 14. The Next Generation. Michael graduated from college with honors and a degree in social work. His senior thesis was about family systems and financial abuse, and he dedicated it to my grandmother, who showed me that surviving trauma is just the first step. The real work is in building something better from the pieces. Emma, now a senior in high school, was accepted to Northwestern University, the same school her mother had attended, on a full academic scholarship. She wanted to study psychology and law, with plans to specialize in elder advocacy. "I want to do what you do. Nai, she told me, help people who've been hurt by their families, make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to other grandmothers." Both kids had chosen to keep my last name, Chen, rather than their father's name, which had been tainted by association with the crimes. They'd also chosen to learn Chinese, something Linda had never encouraged, spending their summer vacations with me, learning to cook traditional dishes and understand their heritage. "Mom always said we were American first," Michael told me, "but you've shown us that we can be both, Chinese and American, hurt and healing, victims and survivors." Robert and I married in a small ceremony at my house, with Michael and Emma as our witnesses. It wasn't a grand affair. We were both too old and too practical for elaborate weddings, but it was perfect. At 76, I was starting a new chapter I'd never expected to write. "Your mother called," Emma told me one evening about 6 months after Linda's unexpected appearance at my speaking event. "She wanted to talk to me." I set down my teacup carefully. "And?" "I told her I wasn't ready, that maybe someday, but not now." Emma's voice was steady, matter of fact. She cried, but I think she understood. Michael had made a different choice. He'd agreed to meet with Linda once in a supervised setting with a counselor present. "I need to hear her explain it," he'd told me. "Not because I'm ready to forgive her, but because I need to understand how someone becomes capable of what she did." The meeting, according to Michael, had been devastating. Linda had broken down completely, admitting not just to the crimes I knew about, but to years of smaller betrayals, lying to me about her marriage problems so she could borrow money, using my business credit to cover her gambling debts, even stealing family jewelry to pay for her lifestyle. "She's sick, Nai," Michael had told me afterward. "Not mentally ill, I don't mean it like that, but morally sick. Like she lost the ability to tell right from wrong where money was concerned." I'd nodded, understanding. Some people think money is security. Others think it's power. Your mother thought it was love, something that could buy her the life she wanted and make her worthy of respect. She never understood that the life worth having can't be purchased. Chapter 15. The Full Circle. 5 years after Linda's release from prison, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from a woman named Jennifer Martinez, who introduced herself as a journalist working on a follow-up story about my case. "Mrs. Chen, I've been tracking similar elder abuse cases across the country, and your story has become something of a touchstone in the advocacy community. I wondered if you'd be willing to participate in a documentary we're making about financial elder abuse." I agreed, partly because I'd never stopped believing in the importance of education and awareness, but mostly because Jennifer mentioned something that intrigued me. She'd found 12 other cases across the country that followed almost exactly the same pattern as mine. Adult children systematically drugging their elderly parents with psychiatric medications, she explained when we met for our first interview. Working with corrupt medical professionals, forging legal documents, gradually isolating the victims from support systems. It's like there's a playbook. The documentary, titled The Trusted Betrayer, aired on a major cable network 2 years later. My segment was just one of several, but it had an impact I hadn't anticipated. Within a week of the broadcast, I received over 300 emails from viewers, some sharing their own stories of family betrayal, others thanking me for giving them courage to protect themselves or their elderly relatives. One email stood out. It was from a woman in Oregon whose daughter-in-law had been pressuring her to sign over power of attorney, while simultaneously bringing her vitamins that made her feel confused and tired. "I saw your story and recognized what was happening to me," she wrote. "I stopped taking the pills and contacted a lawyer. Thank you for saving my life." That email reminded me why I'd chosen to speak publicly about my experience in the first place. It wasn't about revenge or even justice. It was about prevention. Every person who recognized the warning signs and protected themselves was a victory that mattered more than any sentence Linda had served. Chapter 16. The Wisdom of Age. At 79, I found myself in the unexpected position of being something of a celebrity in the elder advocacy world. My book had been translated into 6 languages. I was regularly invited to speak at conferences across the country, and I'd been appointed to a federal task force on elder abuse prevention. But the work that mattered most to me was still local, still personal. I'd started a support group for victims of family financial abuse, meeting every Wednesday evening in the same community center where Linda had made her unexpected appearance years earlier. The group had grown from 5 members to over 30, ranging in age from 62 to 91. Each person brought their own story of betrayal: sons who'd stolen inheritances, daughters who'd maxed out credit cards, grandchildren who'd convinced grandparents to invest in fake businesses. "The hardest part," said Maria, an 83-year-old whose nephew had stolen her house through a deed transfer scam, "is that people think you're embarrassed, like you should have known better." "You did know better," I always reminded the group. "You knew that family members are supposed to protect each other, not prey on each other. The fact that they violated that trust doesn't make you naive. It makes them criminals." One Wednesday evening, a new member joined our circle. She was younger than our usual participants, probably in her early 60s, and she looked nervously around the room before introducing herself. "My name is Carol," she said, "and my daughter has been, well, I think she's been stealing from me. I'm not sure what to do." The story that followed was heartbreakingly familiar. A daughter who'd moved back home to help, gradual changes to bank accounts and legal documents, mysterious new medications that made Carol feel foggy, and increasing isolation from friends and other family members. "How long has this been going on?" I asked gently. "About 8 months, but it's gotten worse in the last few weeks. She's talking about me needing to go into assisted living, and she's been meeting with lawyers without me." I looked around the circle at the other faces, people who'd all been exactly where Carol was sitting now. Some had caught it early, like Carol seemed to be doing. Others had lost everything before they'd realized what was happening. "Carol," I said, "you're not alone anymore, and you're not helpless. What's happening to you is a crime, and there are people who can help you stop it." After the meeting, Carol lingered while the others left. "Mrs. Chen," she said, "I've read your book. I saw the documentary. That's why I came tonight. But I have to ask, do you ever regret fighting back? Do you ever wonder if it would have been easier to just let it happen?" The question surprised me with its honesty. "Every day for the first year," I admitted. "Fighting back cost me my relationship with my daughter, put my grandchildren through hell, and made me a public figure when all I wanted was to be left alone. But Carol, easy isn't the same as right. And letting someone steal your life, even if that someone is your own child, isn't just wrong for you. It's wrong for everyone who comes after you." I handed her Sarah Chang's business card. "Call her tomorrow. Tell her I referred you. And Carol, your daughter is counting on you being too embarrassed or too scared to fight back. Don't give her that gift." Chapter 17. The reckoning continues. Carol's case moved quickly. Sarah, now one of the most sought-after elder abuse attorneys in the state, was able to freeze Carol's accounts and obtain emergency protection orders within a week. Carol's daughter, it turned out, had been even more brazen than Linda. She'd forged her mother's signature on a will that left everything to her, then started drugging Carol with anxiety medications to make her appear incompetent. The pattern is always the same, Sarah told me over lunch a few months after Carol's case was resolved. Isolation, medication, financial control, then legal manipulation. Your case has become the template that other attorneys use to recognize and prosecute these crimes. It was gratifying to know that Linda's betrayal had led to something constructive, but it was also sobering to realize how common this type of abuse had become. Sarah estimated that she was handling 50 similar cases a year, and those were just the ones that were reported and prosecuted. "The real tragedy," she continued, "is how many victims never come forward. They're too ashamed, or they don't want to destroy their families, or they genuinely believe they deserve what's happening to them." That conversation sparked an idea that had been percolating in my mind for months. "Sarah," I said, "what if we could reach people before it happened? What if we could teach seniors to recognize the warning signs and protect themselves proactively?" 6 months later, we launched the Chen Foundation for Elder Protection, funded by proceeds from my book and speaking fees. The foundation offered free legal consultations for seniors, educational workshops on financial protection, and support groups in 10 cities across 3 states. The foundation's motto came from something I'd said during my first television interview. "Trust is earned daily and lost instantly. Protect yourself like your life depends on it." Because it does. Chapter 18. The next chapter. Michael finished his master's degree in social work and joined the foundation as our program director. Emma, now in her junior year at Northwestern, spent her summers interning with us, developing educational materials and working with our legal team. "It's strange," Emma said one evening as we worked together on a presentation for high school students about recognizing elder abuse. "Mom created this terrible thing, but look what grew from it. The foundation, your book, all the people we've helped. It's like her betrayal became the seed for something good. I considered this. Your mother's crime was the catalyst, I said, but what grew from it was the choice to use that experience to help others. Evil doesn't automatically create good. People choose to create good in response to evil. Robert, now in his early 80s and dealing with some health issues of his own, had become the foundation's unofficial grandfather figure. He'd started a men's support group for male victims of elder abuse, a demographic that was often overlooked because of societal assumptions about masculinity and vulnerability. Men are taught not to talk about being victimized, he explained to a reporter who was profiling the foundation. But being betrayed by your own family isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that your family has lost its moral compass. On my 80th birthday, the foundation threw a celebration that doubled as a fundraiser. Over 200 people attended. Former clients, current support group members, advocates, attorneys, and even some government officials who'd worked on elder abuse legislation inspired by my case. The highlight of the evening was a surprise video message from 12 people whose lives had been changed by the foundation's work. They shared their stories of near misses and successful interventions, of families saved and dignity restored. Mrs. Chen, said one woman whose story particularly moved me, you turned your worst experience into other people's salvation. Thank you for showing us that survival isn't enough. Sometimes you have to thrive so loudly that other people remember they can too. Chapter 19. The Unexpected Letter. 3 months after my 80th birthday celebration, I received a letter that I almost didn't open. The return address was from a women's correctional facility in Texas, and the name in the corner was Linda Peterson. She'd taken her ex-husband's name after their divorce was finalized during her incarceration. The letter was 8 pages long, written in the careful script I remembered from her childhood. Unlike her previous attempts at correspondence, this one contained no excuses, no justifications, and no requests for forgiveness. Instead, it was a detailed accounting of every crime she'd committed against me, every lie she'd told, every moment when she'd chosen money over love. She'd written it, she explained, as part of a restorative justice program she'd been participating in for the past 2 years. I know you'll probably throw this away without reading it, the letter began, and you'd have every right to do that. But I needed to write it anyway, not because I expect anything from you, but because taking full responsibility for what I did is part of becoming the person I should have been all along. She detailed the gambling addiction that had started in college and escalated during her marriage, the business investments that had gone bad, leaving her drowning in debt while maintaining the facade of success. The moment when she decided that my money was the solution to her problems, and how she'd rationalized each escalating crime as temporary and necessary. I told myself I would pay you back, she wrote. I told myself you were getting old anyway and wouldn't need the money much longer. I told myself I was protecting you from making bad financial decisions. But the truth is, I was a drug addict whose drug was other people's money. And I was willing to destroy anyone, even my own mother, to get my next fix. The most devastating part of the letter was her description of the night she decided to increase my medication to dangerous levels. Dr. Peterson told me that the higher dosage might cause respiratory depression, especially in someone your age. I knew what that meant. I knew it might kill you. And for about 10 minutes, I sat in my car outside the pharmacy and convinced myself that it would be a mercy, that you wouldn't suffer, that it would look natural, that everyone would be better off. The insurance money would solve all my problems. Michael and Emma would inherit a fortune, and you wouldn't have to live with dementia. But then I realized that I was planning to murder my own mother for money, me. The little girl you used to read bedtime stories to, the teenager you worked double shifts to send to college, the daughter you were so proud of that you cried at my wedding. I had become someone capable of matricide, and the most terrifying part was how rational it seemed in that moment. The letter continued for several more pages, but I had to stop reading and put it away. Not because I was angry. The anger had long since burned itself out. But because Linda's words forced me to confront a truth I'd been avoiding. My brilliant, successful daughter hadn't been corrupted by greed. She'd been sick with it for years, maybe decades, and I'd been too proud of her success to see the darkness underneath. Chapter 20. The Final Lesson. I didn't respond to Linda's letter immediately. Instead, I carried it with me for weeks, rereading sections and thinking about what it meant, not just for Linda and me, but for the work I'd been doing with other families torn apart by financial abuse. The letter contained something I'd never heard from any of the perpetrators whose cases Sarah had prosecuted: genuine insight into the psychological process that allows someone to betray their own family for money. Most of the adult children who stole from their elderly parents either maintained their innocence or offered surface-level apologies that focused more on getting caught than on the harm they'd caused. Linda's letter was different. It was the document I wished I could show to every support group member who asked, "How could my own child do this to me?" Here was the answer, written by someone who'd traveled that dark path and could map out the journey from loving daughter to attempted murderer. I brought the letter to our next foundation board meeting. "I want to share this with you," I told Sarah, Michael, Emma, and Robert, "but I need you to understand that this is still very personal for me. Linda is still my daughter, and reading her words is like watching someone perform surgery on themselves without anesthesia." We read the letter together in my living room, passing the pages around the circle. When we were finished, no one spoke for several minutes. Finally, Emma broke the silence. "She sounds human. For the first time in years, she sounds like the mother I remember, just broken." Michael was less generous. "She sounds like someone who's had 4 years to think about what she did wrong. Words are easy, Nai. Actions are what matter." "What do you want to do with this?" Sarah asked. "It's a remarkable document, probably the most honest account of financial elder abuse from the perpetrator's perspective that I've ever seen. It could be incredibly valuable for education and prevention." I knew what Sarah was thinking. The letter could be the centerpiece of a new educational program. A way to help families understand the warning signs and the psychological progression that led to elder abuse. It could save lives. But using Linda's letter would mean exposing her even further, making her personal hell a public teaching tool. Did she deserve that privacy after what she'd done? Did I have the right to make that decision? "I need to ask her permission," I said finally. "If this is going to help people, she should be the one to decide whether to share it." For the first time in 5 years, I wrote back to my daughter. Chapter 21. The Correspondence. Linda's response came quickly, too quickly, as if she'd been waiting by her mailbox for any sign that I might want to communicate with her. "Mom," she wrote, "I would be honored if my letter could help prevent other families from going through what we went through. If sharing my shame and sickness can spare one elderly person from being betrayed by their own child, then maybe something good can come from the worst thing I've ever done." She included a signed release form giving permission for her words to be used in educational materials, along with a longer letter that went even deeper into the psychology of family financial abuse. "The people who do what I did aren't monsters," she wrote. "We're weak people who convince ourselves that stealing from our parents is somehow different from stealing from strangers. We tell ourselves it's still family money, so it doesn't count as real theft. We tell ourselves our parents are old and confused anyway, so they won't really miss what we take. We tell ourselves we'll pay it back someday when our ship comes in, when our investments pay off, when our luck changes." But the truth is, once you cross that line, once you take that first dollar without permission, you're already lost. Because now you have to cover up what you did, and the cover-up requires more theft, and the more you steal, the more desperate you become, until you're trapped in a web of lies and crimes that keeps growing bigger and bigger. I want people to understand that their parents don't become victims overnight. It happens gradually, almost invisibly. The way a frog will sit in water as it slowly heats up until it's boiling. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already in too deep to escape without losing everything: your reputation, your freedom, your family, your self-respect. The letter was a master class in the rationalization and escalation of elder abuse, written by someone who understood the process from the inside. Sarah immediately saw its potential. "This could revolutionize how we approach prevention," she told me. "Instead of just telling families what to watch for, we can show them how the abuser thinks, what their justification process looks like, how they manipulate both the victim and themselves." We developed Linda's letters into a comprehensive educational program called Understanding the Betrayer: The Psychology of Family Financial Abuse. The program was piloted in 6 cities and was so successful that it was adopted by elder advocacy organizations across the country. The most powerful part of the presentation was always the reading from Linda's letters. Hearing her words, spoken by actors, since Linda couldn't participate directly, had a profound impact on audiences. Adult children would come up to me afterward and admit they'd been considering borrowing money from elderly parents or pressuring them to sign over financial control. "I recognize myself in those letters," one woman told me. "I've been telling myself it would just be temporary, that my mom wouldn't really miss the money. But hearing it from someone who went all the way down that path, I can't do it. I won't become that person." Chapter 22. The Reunion. Linda was released from prison for the second time. She'd been sent back for 18 months for violating parole conditions on a rainy Thursday in November. I knew because Michael had been in contact with her parole officer, though neither of my grandchildren had seen her since her second incarceration. She didn't contact me directly, but I heard through the Foundation's network that she was living in a halfway house in Dallas, working in a call center, and attending addiction counseling specifically designed for people with gambling disorders. "She's been clean for 3 years," Michael told me during one of our monthly dinners. "According to her counselor, anyway. She's been going to Gamblers Anonymous, working a program, doing all the right things." "And how does that make you feel?" I asked. Michael, now 26 and working on his PhD in social work, considered the question carefully. "Cautiously optimistic? I want to believe people can change, especially since that's basically what I've built my career around. But I also know that wanting someone to be different doesn't make them different." Emma, now 23 and in her first year of law school, was less diplomatic. "She had 2 chances to get her life together, and she blew both of them. Why should we believe the third time is different?" I understood both perspectives. Michael had inherited my tendency to look for the best in people. Emma had inherited my hard-earned skepticism about trusting people who'd already proven they couldn't be trusted. 6 months later, Linda wrote to ask if she could attend Emma's law school graduation. "I know I have no right to be there," she wrote. "I know I missed most of her childhood and all of her important milestones because of my own choices. But she's my daughter, and I'm proud of her, and I want her to know that even if I can't be part of her life, I'm still cheering for her from wherever I am." Emma's response was swift and definitive. "No." "I worked hard to get where I am," she told me. "I don't want her crimes overshadowing my achievements. If she wants to be proud of me, she can be proud from a distance." But Michael made a different choice. "I want to meet with her," he told me. "Not to reconcile necessarily, but to see if the person who wrote those letters is real or if it's just another performance." The meeting took place in a supervised setting with a family counselor present, the same protocol that had been followed during their previous contact years earlier. But this time, according to Michael, Linda was different. "She didn't make excuses," he reported back. "She didn't ask for forgiveness or try to explain away what she did. She just acknowledged it, all of it. And she asked about you, Nai. She wanted to know if you were happy, if the foundation was doing well, if you'd found peace. What did you tell her? The truth, that you're thriving, that you turned what she did to you into something that helps other people, that you're probably happier now than you were before she betrayed you, which is the ultimate irony. Michael paused, then continued. She asked me to give you a message. She said to tell you that she understands why you can't forgive her, and she doesn't expect you to. But she wanted you to know that the work you're doing, the foundation, the education programs, the book, it's her legacy too, in a way. The good that came from the evil she created. Epilogue. The last laugh. I'm 82 now, and if I'm being honest, I'm starting to feel my age. My knees creak when I stand up. I need reading glasses for everything, and I can't stay awake past 9 o'clock most nights. But I'm also busier and more fulfilled than I've ever been. The Chen Foundation has helped over 3,000 families prevent or recover from financial elder abuse. Sarah's law firm has prosecuted more than 200 cases, securing millions of dollars in restitution for victims. My book is now required reading in several social work and gerontology programs. Michael finished his PhD and is now teaching at the university level, training the next generation of social workers to recognize and combat elder abuse. Emma graduated from law school summa cum laude and is working as a prosecutor specializing in crimes against the elderly. Robert and I celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary by taking a cruise to Alaska, something neither of us had ever done before. At our age, we're not putting off experiences for someday. Someday is now. I still run the Wednesday evening support group, though I've had to start using a microphone because my voice isn't as strong as it used to be. Last week, a new member joined us, a 74-year-old man whose son had been gradually stealing from him for 3 years. I feel so stupid, he said during his introduction. How did I not see what was happening? It was the same question I'd asked myself thousands of times in the years since Linda's betrayal. But now I had an answer that came from hard-won wisdom rather than fresh pain. You didn't see it because you loved him, I said. Love makes us vulnerable in ways that have nothing to do with intelligence or awareness. The people who hurt us the most are the ones we trust completely, and trust is supposed to be a strength, not a weakness. I looked around the circle at the faces that had become as familiar to me as family, people who'd survived their own children's greed, their siblings' betrayal, their spouses' financial infidelity. The question isn't why we didn't see it coming, I continued. The question is what we do with the wisdom we've gained from surviving it. Do we let it make us bitter and suspicious, or do we use it to protect ourselves and help others? After the meeting, as I was cleaning up the community center, I found a note that someone had left behind. It was written in shaky handwriting on a piece of notebook paper. Mrs. Unravels, Chen, thank you for showing me that being a victim and being a survivor are 2 different choices. My daughter stole my house, but she couldn't steal my spirit. That's still mine to give or keep. Tonight, I decided to keep it. A grateful student. I folded the note carefully and put it in my purse next to Linda's latest letter, one I hadn't opened yet and wasn't sure I ever would. Some conversations belong to the past, and some wisdom is too expensive to purchase twice. As I locked up the community center and walked to my car, I thought about the title of my book, The Last Laugh. People often assumed it was about getting revenge on Linda, about having the final word in our conflict, but that wasn't what I'd meant at all. The last laugh wasn't about Linda. It was about me, about discovering that I was stronger, more resilient, and more capable than anyone, including myself, had ever imagined. It was about learning that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of a better chapter. Linda had tried to erase me, to reduce me to a confused old woman whose life could be disposed of for convenience and profit. Instead, she'd freed me to become more myself than I'd ever been, more honest, more purposeful, more fearlessly authentic. That night, I sat on my back porch with Robert, watching the sunset and planning the Foundation's next educational campaign. At 82, I was still building, still growing, still laughing, Not at Linda's downfall, but at the beautiful irony of a life that had become richer through loss. My daughter had bet everything on my weakness. She'd lost that bet spectacularly, and in the end, that might be the most valuable lesson I could teach anyone. Never underestimate the power of an old woman who has nothing left to lose and everything left to give. The last laugh, as it turned out, was mine after all. Margaret Chen continued her advocacy work until her death at age 87. The Chen Foundation has grown to operate in 12 states and has helped prevent an estimated $50 million in elder financial abuse. Linda Peterson was released from her final prison sentence in 2019 and has maintained sobriety and lawful behavior since that time. She has never attempted to contact her mother or children again. Michael and Emma Chen continue their work in elder advocacy and have established an endowment in their grandmother's name to ensure the foundation's work continues in perpetuity.